It's introspection, personal growth, self-improvement, whatever it is, you gotta question constantly why you're doing what you're doing. And not so much that you lose your mind, but so much that you figure out how to make good choices and maximize the probability that you have a meaningful life.
Welcome back, everybody. We're joined here today by Alan Lazaros. He is the CEO of Next Level University. Alan, we're so excited to have you here today. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to have a conversation with someone who apparently lives right near me.
Yeah, it's truly a very, very small world situation here. Literally next town over. It's so insane. Anthony, how are you today?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to hearing your story, Alan.
Yeah, let's dive into it, Alan. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and kind of what led you to be where you are today?
Okay, so the first thing I want to share with everyone is I love the question of the story because it's important to know who you're learning from. And it's not just the message, it's the messenger as well. So my story started with adversity for sure. I lost my father when I was 2 years old, so he passed away in a car accident when he was 28 years old. And my mom and I had an older sister. So my sister was 6, I was 2.5. And my mom had 2 kids and didn't know really what to do, and she was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was the one who worked. And after that, she got together with my stepfather. My stepfather came into my life when I was 3, and from age 3 to 14, I had a stepfather. So my real last name is actually McCorkle. And I took his last name around, I think, age 7. I'm not certain. But I was asked, do you want to take his last name? And now in hindsight, I kind of understand. And this is another thing I want to share as well. For anyone listening or watching this, I didn't understand any of this until reflecting back. I think of it like when you see a movie as a kid and then you are an adult. I'm 35 now. I often joke I'm hoping to hit puberty at 36. So that would be good. But I look 15 even though I'm 35. And so I've sort of rewatched the movie of my own life. And it's like when you watch a movie as a kid and then you rewatch it and you are rewatching it as an adult going, oh, now I get it. Okay, got it. Interesting. Okay, so 7 years old, take my stepfather's last name. His name's Steve Lazaros. My name's now Alan Lazaros. And he leaves my family at 14. So that's 11 years with a stepfather. This was sort of like late 90s, early 2000s. And back then, the economy was really booming prior to the 2000s. And we did really well. So my stepdad, when he left, not only did he take his family with him, I haven't seen any of them since, although I have been conversing with him a little bit on Facebook. He took 90% of the income with him. So when I was 10 years old, and you'll actually recognize this, Jason, because you're local, I was driving with my mom, and I found she was talking about WPI, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, so you know of WPI. And so my Uncle Merle was the track and field coach there at the time, my uncle on my mother's side. And she said, Alan, you're really smart. You know, engineers make a lot of money. You're really good at math. Math is good for engineering. You should go to WPI one day and you'll be really successful. She always taught me aim high and you'll have choices, and that's definitely true. So anyways, that was my dream, sort of planted the seed of I'm going to go to WPI, make mommy proud type of thing. And when my stepdad left, he got the yacht and the apartment building. We got the house and the dog, and he took 90% of the income with him. So I went from excited to try to get into WPI to even if I get in, I don't know how I'm going to go. So I now refer to this part of my life as boats and bullshit. My stepdad loved snowmobiles and vacations and ski trips and deep sea fishing and all that kind of stuff. Plus, we did fairly well. He worked for a company called AGFA, Hospital Computers. And so after that, though, I went from, custom-made potential yacht, ski trips and all that to I get free lunch at school now because our income is so low. And I shop at Salvation Army now. And I used to get Dreamcast and Xbox and all kinds of cool stuff for Christmas and all that. So that actually built a lot of character, which was really good because I might have ended up more entitled than I am now. But I went from I can't wait to go to WPI to even if I get in, I don't know how I'm going to go. So what I did was sort of sit down with my mom, and this is actually an interesting story. I asked her to take 8th grade off, which is a little weird. And I still go to school because legally you had to, but I basically said, I want to take 8th grade off and not try like the other kids. And she said, okay, as long as you promise me you'll get the President's Award in high school. And so behind me is the President's Award signed by George Bush. And essentially what the President's Award was is you have to get a 95 or above GPA every report card for all of high school. So you basically have to get straight A's. And every time you get a B, you have to freak out. And so I did. I fortunately was able to do that. It was brutal, but I did it. And I got tons of financial aid and scholarships, which was awesome because I got to go. I got into WPI. I got to go. I go to WPI and I do computer engineering, which is, one of the hardest majors at one of the hardest technical schools in the world. It was just awful. It was so brutal, but really good decision, just really tough on me. And I thought I was smart in high school, and then I go to WPI. I was like, oh my God, there's a whole nother level to this game. Figure it out, sink or swim, make it happen. Get my computer engineering degree. At this point, I've got a couple internships. I stay for my master's in business. And then I go into corporate. And at this point, I've worked for a bunch of different companies. So like iRobot, Sensata Technologies, Oz Development. I lived in LA for a time. I worked for a company eventually called Cognex. Cognex is a machine industrial automation company. Think of like the cameras that run automation in manufacturing facilities. So I started a little inside sales team at Cognex. And then I got promoted to outside sales. So I job hopped a lot, and I jumped the pay scale pretty quickly after WPI. So it was so weird because I went from like fairly well off, then my father passes away and we're broke, to then my stepdad's there and we're fairly well off, to then he leaves and we're broke. And then I'm broke all through college. And then all of a sudden I'm jumping the pay scale. I go from 65 to 85, 85 to 105, 105 to 125, and then I cap at 180. This is back in my mid-20s. And just a weird roller coaster of a journey for sure. So anyways, I'm working at Cognex, and I'm going into industrial automation facilities, and I sell equipment. And it's 2015. I'm up in New Hampshire with my little cousin. He's 17 at the time. We're playing Call of Duty. And we decide to go to TGI Fridays. We're not partying, nothing like that. And I'm looking down at the GPS. It was that bad winter where the snowbanks were covering the signs.
Mm-hmm.
And I was supposed to yield, and I didn't. And so I end up on the wrong side of the road, and I look up from the GPS, and I see what I thought was a Mack truck in front of me. Big, bright lights. Fortunately, it wasn't a Mack truck. It was a lift-kitted pickup truck. A lot of lift-kitted pickup trucks up in New Hampshire. I know you know.
There
Jason.
sure are.
Yeah, there sure are. And I was driving a 2004 Volkswagen Passat because at this time in life, I was trying to pay off all my school loans, and I had $150,000 in a investment account with all the different tech companies, ETFs, index funds, all that. And I paid off all school debt. I was super pumped about that, and I bought this car for $5,000. It was a Volkswagen Passat 2004, and I loved this car. I used to call it the tank. German-engineered steel trap of a car, and I'm still convinced to this day this car saved my life. So both airbags did deploy. His knee was hurt on the airbag. My face was hurt on the airbag, but physically we were okay. And this car was mangled too, by the way. So this was, I've seen pictures of my dad's car, and I've seen pictures of my car. And in my speeches, I usually show it because it's just like, whoa, not a fender bender. But after that, I got messed up mentally, emotionally, and spiritually because I grew my whole life hearing stories about John, my dad, who died at 28. So my little cousin is tweeting about it, no big deal, still invincible high schooler. And I'm mid-20s existential crisis type of stuff. And so I'm sitting there in an armchair at my cousin's house, because technically it was my second cousin, but drinking whiskey, just contemplating my existence. And physically I was okay, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually I was definitely not. And I just had all these regrets flooding me. So many regrets. Because The parts of the stories that I haven't really shared yet is there was a lot of drinking growing up. My mom and stepdad didn't get along. Now that I know you're so local, Jason, this will be fascinating. I now playfully refer to where I grew up as the Boulevard of Broken Dreams. And I know you can probably resonate a little bit. Yep, you could see that. So, not to offend anyone local, but particularly, do you know where Chocolog Road is?
Yeah.
Chocolog Pond, Blissful Meadows?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay,
Yep.
so I grew up on that pond.
Okay.
So that was, yeah.
Yep.
So, anyways, beautiful home, but just not exactly a dream-chasing community. So, growing up, I had all these regrets of, who am I? Am I proud of the man I've become? I drink too much and too often. Did I make good choices? Was I wrong? All this kind of stuff. So the best way I can describe it now, again, and this is in hindsight, at the time I didn't understand any of this, is I was successful from the outside in. I had a beautiful girlfriend named Courtney. I was in my mid-20s. I lived in Worcester with her on a lake. I was a 1% earner globally, not in the U.S., but globally I was. Not net worth, earner. 180 grand back then was 1% earner globally. Someone called me out for that once. It's like, listen, I misspoke, sir. But anyways, and I was very successful. Computer engineering degree, master's in business, one of the best tech schools in the world. Awesome. Go you. From the outside in, it looked like I had it all, but inside out, I was not a happy person. I was deeply unfulfilled, and I didn't know that because I didn't even know what fulfillment meant back then. And now the way I describe it is after that I flipped the script, and I flipped the script hard. I found personal development. I found personal growth. I found self-improvement. And I just got obsessed. And the reason why, and I now understand this now, I had this moment. I was Tony Robbins' TED Talk. And regardless of what you think of Tony, this TED Talk is magnificent. Best TED Talk ever created, in my opinion. And it was my first really thing where it really clicked of, if I improve myself, everything else in my life will get better. I can't change where I grew up. I can't change that my childhood was challenging. I can't change that my father died. I can't change these other external things, but I can and I will change me. And when I change me, everything around me hopefully will change. And that was really, I say hope. And so fortunately that's the case. And now here I am 9 years later, and everything is different now. I actually live in a condo north of where I grew up, a little north, not far from where I grew up. And I'm now deeply fulfilled on the inside, and achievement is sort of a byproduct of that now. And now we have a successful podcast. We have a 21-person team, Next Level University. I have a business partner, Kevin, who, by the way, also grew up in Uxbridge. He lives in New Hampshire.
Nice, keeping it nice and local.
Yeah, nice and local. So Kevin Palmieri is his name. You may or may not know that. I don't know. You're probably a lot younger than I am. But anyways, so we now have this awesome company and global top 100 podcasts, 1,600 episodes. But the whole thing is I redesigned my entire existence around this one concept, which is holistic self-improvement, health, wealth, and love. And I started a little podcast called Conversations Change Lives. He had a podcast called the Hyper Conscious Podcast, and we teamed up. I was his first guest. He was my first guest. And no, I said that wrong. He was my first guest. Then I was his first guest. And then we teamed up and had the worst podcast name ever of all time, which was the Hyper Conscious Podcast meets Conversations Change Lives. And we did that for, it was brutal. We did that for like 20 episodes, and we said, listen, man, why don't we just partner up, because we're doing this every week. And so we went all in on Hyper Conscious Podcast, change the way you act, change the way you think, change the way you live. And then eventually we rebranded in 2020 to Next Level University right before COVID. And then we had a studio, and the team built and all this kind of stuff. And now we have 23 departments, and we do meetups and book club, and we have an event coming up, by the way. Jason, we have an event coming up. It's so interesting that I can say that to you right now. But now we do all these things, and that's all great. But all of it comes down to I reinvented myself, and I reinvented my life, and I decided no longer to achieve at the expense of my character. And I think a lot of people are unclear about what they want to achieve in life, and I think if that's you need to focus on that. But some people are really clear on who they are, but not what they want. Other people are really clear on what they want, but not who they are. That was me. You really do need both. And that's the yin and the yang of life, that I feel like all of us are either righty or lefty. And you need to be ambidextrous if you want to be fulfilled. If you want to be successful, you don't have to be ambidextrous at all. I mean, that's clear, right, to all of us. But if you want to be fulfilled, you've got to be ambidextrous, because you don't want to end up rich and divorced or in a great relationship but no time freedom, right? So
Right. Yeah, that's fascinating. I do want to make a quick call out. So you said you listened to Tony Robbins' TED Talk, and I find it interesting because one of our guests a few weeks ago also had his life changed by Tony Robbins, but not through a TED Talk. He actually did a firewalk, one of Tony Robbins' firewalks back in, what was it, Anthony, the 90s, I think, and then ended up like running them. So he was in charge of doing all the fireworks for Tony Robbins for some number of years. I just find it interesting because, like you said, people think different ways about Tony Robbins, but out of our limited set of guests we've had so far, 2 of them now have had meaningful, life changes because of Tony Robbins, and I think that's interesting.
he transforms many lives, and I respect that deeply. And I think that he exposes a lot of people into the inner world of what are your core values, and why are you doing what you do, and all that. So anyways, I respect his work so much, and yeah, his work definitely helped me shift into a personal development oriented world, for sure.
Yeah, something that I think is really interesting about what he teaches is most people don't get exposure to personal development until they kind of stumble on it. Like it's not a thing you learn at school. You don't learn about like thinking about what motivates you, what kind of person you want to become. You don't really learn about like what it is, like thinking about what you want to achieve. And then so you're on this drift and you're fumbling through life and you end up trying a bunch of different things. Maybe you don't know, right? You had, Alan, you had said earlier, like some people don't know what it is they want yet. And so you do have to try a bunch of stuff before you can actually figure out like, I do like this and I want more of that, or I don't like this and I don't want more of that. But for a lot of people, they don't stumble on the person who tells them to pay attention to either one of those sides, like the left or the right. They just kind of like ambling about. So I'm not sure. I mean, I guess with your podcast, like you're trying to, and what we're doing, it's like we're trying to make it easier for people to stumble on, like, I don't know if you call it introspection, maybe, like spend the time thinking about what it is that makes you, what you want, what's missing. But it's not a natural behavior.
In college at WPI, my freshman year, there was a big website back then. Can I just ask how old you guys are, just so that I have reference, because I'm a chronological math thinker and I need to know where you guys are at. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm 35.
Okay, oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
All right, continue.
Yeah.
Anthony?
Yeah, and I'm 37. Well, I will be
okay.
Like in a week.
Nice. You guys are looking good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you and I both graduated in 2007. Is that fact?
Yeah. Yep.
That's wild. Okay. So anyways, it's 2007, 2008, and I'm at WPI. I'm a freshman. And there was a big website called Stumble Upon.
Love Stumble Upon.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you remember Stumble Upon. Everyone
yes.
in the dorm was using this, and I think that's how people go through life. Stumble Upon, for the listeners and the viewers, was a website kind of like webcam roulette. You do stupid, funny stuff, and then it stumbles upon other people doing stupid, funny stuff, sometimes gross, sometimes whatever. And it's a reckless website, which I think it got taken down or whatever. But I actually think that is how most people live their lives. They stumble upon, okay, well, Alan, you're good at math. Your uncle goes, is the track and field coach at WPI. The field there is called Norcross Field. That's my Uncle Merle. And, you're good at math. Engineers make a lot of money. You should be an engineer. That's it? Really? Engineers make a lot of money. You're good at math. That's enough to make a life choice? Your whole career?
Yeah.
No. Hey, hell no. We need to have the constant contemplation of questions of why are you aiming at that? Are you still trying to get mom's approval or dad's approval or your stepdad's approval or whatever? Do you fear judgment? If you do, why? Do you speak up or not? And so, yes, I would call it introspection. I would call it self-awareness. I would call it higher consciousness, whatever you want to call it. I think we're all selling ice cream, and I think we're all a different flavor. So you guys are selling Rocky Road. I'm selling, I don't know, black raspberry. The point is we all love ice cream. The problem is a lot of people, particularly kids, that grow up in environments that are not dream-oriented, goal-oriented, personal development-oriented, they don't get exposure to ice cream. It blows my mind that it took 26 years for me to figure out that personal growth is personal. I was always an achiever, always, through and through. Back in the Halo days, I wanted to be a semi-pro gamer, all that kind of stuff. Always been achieving my entire life. But I didn't have any clue what was going on in this heart and what was going on in this mind to the extent that I do now. And all of us should look back when we were a teenager and say, wow, I was such an idiot. That's okay, because that means you've improved. But the question becomes, who were your role models? I'm so convinced of that. I just didn't have good role models. I didn't have a male role model that had dreams and goals. And I eventually did when I got into corporate. I had mentors and coaches and mentors and coaches. And in hindsight, some of them were full of shit and some of them were great. But at the end of the day, now with the 21st century, some of this stuff is online, whether it's Tony's TED Talk or your podcast or my podcast. It's very cool how you can have a mentor in your pocket from anywhere on the planet completely free. That's what we say at Next Level University. And so I coach an 18-year-old. His name's Calvin. The stuff I taught him earlier today, it took me 30 years to figure this out. Some people don't know what I taught him today. Why? Because they don't coach as many people as I do. I just surpassed my 5,000th coaching session, and I'm just studying humans constantly. So to your point, Anthony, it's introspection, personal growth, self-improvement, whatever it is, you gotta question constantly why you're doing what you're doing. And not so much that you lose your mind, but so much that you figure out how to make good choices and maximize the probability that you have a meaningful life.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking about the whole time you were talking there was people, especially young people, but I mean even, into later stages in life, don't really have a goal in mind other than, make money and be able to afford a house and vacations and things. Right? It's all about sort of superficial, I just want to have a good life, in quotes, right? Like that's sort of what people are aiming for, but what does that actually mean? And so at some point, you kind of figure out, what is it that I'm doing? You figure out your why. And I think something I've heard a ton through various listings of podcasts is like, you write your own eulogy. Like, what is it that you want people to say about you when you die? And live your life so that they will say those things. And maybe that's a bit intense for, an 18-year-old coming out of high school. But the sooner I think you can orient yourself on a path to get somewhere that you can actually feel good about, I think that's a good place to be. Because then you do have that sense of fulfillment. You know that, yes, these things that I'm doing are in service of getting me to where I want to be. And it's not just because I'm good at math and because computer engineers make a lot of money, right? I'm going to this school because this will get me towards changing the world somehow, however that might be, if that's your goal, right?
People always say that it's the journey, not the destination. And I understand why they say that, but it's I would say it's not deep enough thinking. The destination you choose dictates the journey. I drove across the country in my early 20s. We drove from Boston. I usually say Boston to LA, but I'm going to say Uxbridge to LA with a friend of mine. Just so everyone's aware, Jason and I think I already mentioned this several times. We live one town away, so he has reference to this. But anyways, so I drove across the country. There's a big difference between driving from Massachusetts to LA and from me to you, Jason. You're 15 minutes north. That's not a journey.
Right.
That's a hop, skip, and a jump. You can't have a meaningful life driving 15 minutes north. I drove across the country. I saw Columbus, Ohio. We went to Vegas. We had the Rockies were unbelievable. That's a meaningful journey. People say it's about the journey. No. Absolutely not. There is no journey if you have no destination. Try it.
Right.
Try your GPS in your car and just drive around aimlessly. That's not adventure. That's wandering around aimlessly, wondering why you're not fulfilled. That's short-term pleasure and immediate gratification at the expense of long-term meaningful fulfillment. And so I concur with what you said a million times. There's 3 things a GPS needs. It needs a destination address, which is a goal. Even if when you get there, you're like, wow, I didn't really want this, it turns out. At least you had a destination, right? At least you had a direction. You don't want to be lost in the desert without a compass. So destination address, number 1. Accurate destination address, by the way. A lot of people are like, I want a successful podcast. Why didn't I go viral? How come I'm not Joe Rogan? Right? So accurate destination address. The second one is it needs to know where you are. A current address. Accurate current address. AKA self-awareness. Right? So you need to have a goal and you need to know where you actually are. So there goes a percentage of the population. Imagine 18-year-old. They don't know who they are or where they want to go. Understandable, they're 18, right? And then the third thing you need, and most importantly, and this is where we really screw it up, you need accurate, updated data. So you guys are old like me, and you remember the Garmin that had inaccurate data, things going to drive you into a lake.
Yep.
Right? In MapQuest, it's like you never get there. So my point is now we have, Google, it's updating constantly, which is good from our phones, and it's updating real time, that kind of thing. But back in our day, pre-internet, the Garmin was not updated and you couldn't get anywhere. So every human who wants to have a deeply meaningful, growth-oriented, contribution-oriented life has to have those 3 things. You have to consistently and sustainably find a way to have a goal, a destination. You have to have enough self-awareness to understand where you're actually at in order to bridge the gap. And then you need to have accurate data on the terrain. So I think of it as you need to know who you are, self-awareness. The 3 things you need to know: yourself, other people, and the world. How you work and why you work that way. How other people work and why they work that way. And then how the world works and why it works that way. That last one, it's so fascinating. So 1,600 episodes, 5,000 coaching calls, coming up on my 10,000th hour of podcasts and speeches and all stuff. I don't say that to brag. I say it because there's too many talking heads in this industry that are saying things without actually knowing the real stuff. And I understand because I started there too. Here's my point. When you coach this many people from this many countries, all over the world, all different industries, all different backgrounds, all different races, nationalities, ethnicities, you just start to realize everyone has the same issue. Those are the 3 issues. You either don't know enough about yourself, you don't know enough about humans, or you don't know enough about the world. And I have these heart-driven, incredible human beings that I coach. They are super self-aware, they're emotionally intelligent, they're connected, they're wonderful. But they don't know anything about the economy, and they don't win in the economy. And then I meet these other absolute ding-dongs that just crush it in the economy, but they don't know anything about themselves, and they take better care of their Porsche than their own family. And I told myself, I can't do either of those. I can't. There's got to be a way to be ambidextrous. There's got to be a way to be a computer engineering, macro and microeconomic genius and be emotionally intelligent and not end up divorced. And I just went on that journey of this is personal growth and this is professional growth. You have personal development and you have professional development. And all of us, I always joke, but I mean this. If you want a coach, you need a therapist. If you want a therapist, you need a coach, my friend. Right? Kevin and I, business partners. He had a therapist, wanted a therapist, desperately needed a coach. I wanted a coach, had a dozen of them, mentors, coaches, all the 9, and I needed a therapist. I didn't want a therapist. Going to therapy for me was like, men can't even ask for directions. You think we're going to get a therapist? Right? That was hard for my ego. It was tough. That's why you guys are laughing, because you're like, shit. Yeah, so therapy's been unbelievably life-changing for me. But for someone who's already emotionally intelligent, who's already dealt with their trauma, who already understands that stuff, vulnerability, all that, you need a coach who's going to help you succeed. And for someone who's already successful but maybe struggles in relationships, you need to learn some emotional intelligence. You need to look at your traumas. You need to understand that kind of stuff. And so a lot of us are lost. We don't know where we're headed. We don't know where we are. We don't know how to get there. We don't have updated data. And we're driving into lakes wondering why we're not successful. And the truth is, it's this constant, forever pursuit of shifting out of, there's so much information now, and a lot of it is not accurate. People always ask, like, why do you care so much about intelligence? Why do you care about accurate information? Because you can't make good decisions without it. When you get a GPS and it detours you, if the detour has not updated information, you're gonna take a left instead of a right. You're gonna end up not at your destination, and then you're gonna complain about it. Instead of, listen, I am not humble enough, courageous enough, or vulnerable enough to say, I don't know where the hell I am, and I don't know where the hell I'm going. And that's what getting a therapist or a coach is all about. It's just admitting, oh, maybe I do have a drinking problem. Maybe I did have tons of trauma that I haven't dealt with. Maybe I've never stood up to my dad or my mom or my stepdad. Maybe it's the next TED Talk, or it's the next book, or the next. It's so interesting because I don't think we were ever really taught what humility really looks like. A lot of people are outwardly modest or outwardly humble, and a lot of people think I'm arrogant. But the truth of the matter is, I'm the one reading the books every day. I try to be humble in my actions. And I hope that, unfortunately, it took me a car accident to get humble enough to get help. And I don't want other people to have to get in a car accident and face mortality and, almost end up like my dad, who died at 28, to get the help they need. And so hopefully this podcast, my podcast, hopefully these books and self-improvement can reach people quicker than me, because most of the challenges, quite frankly, that I had, I do believe self-improvement would have saved my life. I think it would have changed everything. And fortunately, I'm grateful for where I ended up, but I mean, wow, right? It's definitely a statistical anomaly for sure.
So I wanted to ask, now that you've basically, like, you've seen the patterns, you understand what either people are missing, or maybe it's the coach, maybe it's the therapist, maybe it's something in between. Like, how are you using your what is it? Next Level University? Like, how are you using your business to help guide people?
So at the beginning, Kevin and I thought we were going to attract like bodybuilder bros. I was a fitness model, fitness coach, fitness competitor at the time, and he was as well a competitor, fitness competitor, and we thought we were going to attract bodybuilder bros. And we ended up over time realizing, like, our listener is not men. And I've since researched the statistics. The self-improvement space is 60% women. But Kevin didn't have a father either. And his father left when he was very young, and he was raised by his mom and his mom and his grandma. And I have a 21-person team. 90% of them are empowered, incredible women. And our listener, we eventually realized, to answer your original question, over time we started realizing who is our listener. And I know you guys will figure that out as you go as well. But eventually we came up with the archetype of our listener. It's women who are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, who struggle with courage, clarity, and confidence, who want more fulfillment out of their intimate relationship and their careers. And still to this day, and we've refined that a bit, now it's women who struggle with self-worth, who are sick and tired of tolerating toxic people in their lives and toxic careers. But even though it's evolved over time, the through line's the same. We have a common wound, and we have a common aspiration and a common core value. The common core value is personal development. Kevin and I are existentialists. You two are too, whether you call yourself that or not. You guys would not like me at all if you weren't. I mean, these are tough questions. Seriously. Most people want to talk about football. Like, I cannot talk about football. I just won't do it. I'm not nothing against football. I just don't care. I don't care. What I do care about is these existential questions about life and philosophy and the meaning of life. And so our listener, to answer your original question with NLU, how do we guide people? I used to do this thing where I would try to go save people. And I now understand from my childhood why that is, but I used to take my ship into the storm and try to save people from the storm, and then my ship would also get wrecked in the storm. And I now understand that that's a losing game, and it took me 30 years to figure that out, and I can't take credit. My girlfriend Amelia really realized that I was doing that. And now I have the self-worth and the self-esteem enough to say, you know what, I'm going to be a lighthouse, and we can guide the ships home, but I'm not going to come and try to save you. And so then we get into archetypes, and I'll go brief with this, but victim, villain, hero, guide. It's such a life-changing understanding. A victim has low self-worth and low self-belief. And by the way, none of us really know that necessarily because we were never taught self-belief or self-worth. To your original point, Anthony, we weren't taught anything in school that has anything to do with personal development for some reason. So a victim has low self-belief and low self-worth. A villain has inflated self-worth, and deep down, they don't believe in themselves at all. Think of the bullies at school. They pretend their S doesn't stink. They pick on the little guy to make themselves feel bigger. They don't actually believe in themselves, and they think it's cool not to give a crap. How'd that go for that person, right? But anyways, and I was bullied too, so forgive my stuff. But the villain is inflated pufferfish ego that is unearned. You believe you're deserving without any effort. Everyone can think of someone from their past, also known as the spoiled brats of the world, right? And then you've got the hero, and I was the hero. That's what it was. High self-belief, I can do it, and not only can I do it, I can bring everybody with me. What a huge mistake that was. Holy crap. It's like trying to climb Mount Everest, dragging a dumpster up it. So there's a fourth archetype that requires high self-belief and high self-worth. The fourth archetype is the guide. And I always use Harry Potter as a reference, not necessarily because it's the best, but because everyone knows it, and I also do like it. Harry, victim, both parents die. Voldemort, obviously the villain, thinks he deserves everything by default. Okay. Harry becomes the hero when he's 11, and he goes to Hogwarts, and he is the hero who is trying to save everyone from Voldemort. Stops being the victim. Stops being helpless, decides to actually take charge of his own life. And again, there's a lot more to that. But anyways, so then he has to face the villain inside of him when he finds out that Voldemort is inside of him and that he speaks parcel tongue. I got called out for that once. When he speaks Slytherin, one of my team members was like, Alan, he speaks parcel tongue. I was like, okay, my bad. And so then he has to fight the villain inside of him. And that's the whole scene with Sirius Black, where the world isn't separated between Death Eaters and good people. It's our choices that matter, right? So that kind of thing. And then the coolest part is he didn't become the guide until after he defeated Voldemort and after Dumbledore died. So Dumbledore was his guide. And Dumbledore died, and that's when Harry had his chance to be the guide, be his own man. At the end, when he breaks the Elder Wand and he throws it away, that's when he became the guide. He is good enough as he is. I just got the chills. Now, Ron, who's still in hero mode, is like, whoa, that's the Elder Wand. Hey, you're getting rid of the Elder Wand, right? I'm not good enough yet. That's still, Ron is still the hero. He hasn't faced his and become his guide. So again, it's a metaphor. Every movie, every story, every book is that same sort of archetypal storyline. And that's why movies inspire us, because it's our own journey of facing the villain inside of us, our ego, getting rid of this victim, poor me mindset. It's not your fault you had an alcoholic parent, but it is your responsibility to actually create a life out of that. And then the hero is you go achieve, and that's where I spent most of my life, 30 years. And then it wasn't until my 30s that I woke up because of my beautiful girlfriend, Emilia, who said, Alan, I'll never forget this. We're driving home. I'm driving home. I'm on the phone with her. And she said, Alan, self-belief and self-worth are different, right? I was like, nope. I had never thought about it before, And now our whole business is kind of built on that. And when you asked how do we guide people, that's really what it is underneath it. Help you build your self-worth or your self-belief. A lot of people have sneaky self-belief, but they think these other people who have inflated self-worth are actually confident. They're not. It's ego. It's actually ego. Deep down, when they're behind the scenes by themselves, they don't believe in themselves. Answer this for me. Think of someone who you think is portraying super confidence, right? Where deep down it's full of it. Why would someone with level 10 confidence have level 2 goals? Think about it. If you're so confident, why don't you have any goals? Oh.
They don't think they can get there.
Yeah, it's not real. It's manufactured. Yeah. It's fake. And it turns out most of my life, a lot of people think I was doing that. They thought I was fake. They come up to me like, oh my God, look what you and Kevin have done. Like, whoa. I said I was going to do it. And they're like, you did it. Obviously didn't believe us. Right? Which is fine. But it turns out people think I'm super arrogant because they think that I'm also doing that. They think that I'm faking it and that I'm just saying stuff. And then when I actually do the thing, they're like, oh, you were really serious about that. And I'm sitting there so naive going, what did you think I was going to do? I meant what I was saying. But it turns out most people don't. They're just saying stuff. And that's because maybe they don't really know how to do it. Maybe they didn't reverse engineer it. And the last thing I'll share here is identify whether you're in a victim, helpless place. I've been there, for sure. Whether you're the hero saving everyone because you believe in yourself, but your self-worth is low, so you don't think you're worthy of anything other than that. Most likely had an abusive childhood. Or if you're the villain. Are you walking around like your ass don't stink? Behind the scenes, miserable and unfulfilled and living in self-doubt, but pretending your life's awesome with your BMW on social media, but behind the scenes you're not happy at all? And I had a little villain time, for sure. I was portraying confidence when deep down I didn't feel good about myself at all. We've all been there. We all go through these phases. That's the growth journey. That's the hero's journey. Victim, hero, villain for a little bit, rut-row, and then eventually guide, back to hero guide. And so hopefully that's something that unlocks something for people.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Very, very well said. So I want to kind of bring us to the end a little bit by asking you, and you talked a little bit about the things that you've done. What are the things that you want to do? What are your goals that you now fully believe that you can achieve? And how can we and our listeners help you get there?
You're very sweet. I appreciate it, man. So our short term, mid range, or long term. So the long term goal is, and Kevin always jokes about this. He's like, no one believes you. But anyways, I need to have the courage to say it even if no one believes me. I want us to build the most successful holistic self-improvement company on the planet. And I want to bring self-improvement to the masses. And I realize how difficult that is. And I'm not doing it alone. We produce 50 other podcasts, and, all of us are in this sort of self-improvement space, and collectively, I think we can really do it. I think that's what Kevin and I would have needed. I know that's what Kevin and I would have needed. So that's the long range. The short-term goal is, so this year we're actually crossing 1 million listens and $1 million, which is really cool. Not $1 million per year, but over the 6 years. And as CEO, my responsibility, we do metrics, and everyone has their own metrics and all that. But my metrics that I'm tracking right now are, the first goal is, and again, you can see shaky in my voice because I'm scared to. Some people are afraid of success. Some people are afraid of failure. The people afraid of failure don't feel like they're competent enough. The people afraid of success believe in themselves a ton but never fit in easily. I'm the one who doesn't fit in easily. If you said you have to add value on this podcast, okay, awesome, let's do it. You have to get Jason and Anthony to really like you. Ooh. I don't know. Right? I don't know.
Yeah, jury's still out on that one.
yeah. I know. I figured, right? Understandable. So anyways, I'm afraid to say this, but I will. So we're going for $500,000 this year, and a certain number of cash on hand. So I always think cash on hand needs to be 10% of goal gross. So $50K for cash on hand for the business. It's kind of like an emergency fund runway type of thing. And then what was my third one? Oh, I have something called a leaderboard. My girlfriend and I have it on the whiteboard downstairs, and the leaderboard consists of number of team members and number of clients. And so right now my leaderboard is 40. It actually just became 41 because we just onboarded a new team member named Nicole, which I'm pumped about. But yeah, so those are my goals, and that's what's coming. And we have a live event coming up, like I told you about, and we got a Dreamliner, a journal that we just published that I use every day, and we got a book club and meetups and all kinds of cool stuff. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, we wish you nothing but success in your journey. It's definitely one that is closely aligned with what we're trying to do here, and definitely one that's very valuable to a great number of people. So we wish you nothing but success in that journey, and we'll help however we can.
Thank you both very much for having me. I really appreciate it. I sensed a lot of humility, a lot of gratitude for me being here. I'm sure that some of the stuff we talked about was uncomfortable, but thank you to you both and the listeners for sitting in that and hopefully not villainizing me. If you guys ever want help growing your business or your podcast, just reach out. I would love to do a free whatever. And obviously, Jason, you're local, so we'll see what comes of that. Cool.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, like, I think based on my limited interaction with you and just seeing how you present yourself and the thoughtfulness of your answers and the experience that you're bringing with you, that you'll smash those goals. Don't worry about it. Just keep on keeping on.
Good to be believed in. I appreciate you, Anthony. Thank you. And yeah, we will definitely continue grinding for sure. But it's the most meaningful work. I always joke with myself, like, what if I just went and sold the Aura rings? You know what I'm saying? Whenever it gets really hard, I just think about that. And then I go, Alan, you can't do that. You got to. And that's when you know you're in your calling. You don't want to do it. You have to do it. So
our version of that is the dive shop. Quit work and just go open a dive shop. That's the easy version.
That's the easy.
My naive version of the easy version.
Yeah. Nice.
All right. Well, Alan, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed that.
My pleasure. My honor. Thank you both.
All right, everybody. Until next time, be well.